It is Monday, September 25th. Welcome, everybody. John Aravosis here in Washington, D.C., coming to you live with the Aravosis Report, my nightly show, Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, U.S., where we talk about the latest news from the war in Ukraine. Lots of news today, lots of good news today, actually. Let me get TikTok rolling here on my iPad. Introduce yourselves. Say where you're from, if you would, while I get this set up. And as always, it'll take maybe a minute or two to let folks arrive before we get started. There we go. Boom. Oh, all right. Anyway, well, see how it is. Try to go out and come back in and see if it's better, Evie. We'll see if it's happening for other people as well. Anyway, hello all. How are we doing after not a long weekend, but a weekend nonetheless? Hey, Secret Squirrel. Boy. Anyway, hey, Ash. What's going on, folks? I'm hoping YouTubers, etc., your connection's fine. Evie was not. Still very loud. Well, let's see how everybody else's is, Evie. It may just be you. Hard to say. Thank you, Elizabeth. Yep, other YouTubers, let me know if it's lagging for you or not. Although Evie's on Twitch, so hard to say. Hey, Scotland. Geordie. Who knew Geordie was a real name? Hey, Big Hawk. Star Trek, you know. Never heard it in person. All right, I'm going to refresh the page on YouTube, etc., to see if it's quicker for you. Let's see how that's going now on YouTube. All right. Turn off. Boom. There we go. All right, just refreshed. It should be better on TikTok. Anyway, shalom pretentiously. Anyway, guys, what do you think? What do you think? Anyway, like I said, there's a lot of good news today, actually. So I think we'll have a good show. Thank you, Martin. Super Hornet as well. I'm skipping my tea for today, so hopefully don't yawn at you guys. But I wasn't feeling great this weekend, so I didn't feel like tea today. Hey, Marie, привет to you as well. But thank you, Trilitic, for the gift. And Bonnie and Jetta, so many people. Thank you, guys. All right, guys. I'm about to get rolling here. I'll start getting rolling. People will come in slowly, but that's okay. Welcome. I am John Aravosis. Thank you, Ellen and Ben and Tomcat, all for the gifts on TikTok. Thank you, guys. And Velika as well. I am John Aravosis. This is my show, the Aravosis Report. I hold this Monday to Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern. Thank you, Shane. And basically, we cover the latest news from Ukraine. I try to go through with my background in politics, media, lots of different foreign policy. Thank you, Pedro and Eva. And try to pick out the stories that I think matter. Thank you, Fred. And try to pick up stories that at least give you a larger sense of what's going on, not just incidents, but that hopefully give you a larger sense of how the war is going, things like that. Thank you, Ben and Marcy. So I will about to get rolling. The way the show works is I will talk the first half of the show or so about the news. Thank you, Happy Beach. And second half of the show, I'll take your guys' questions on TikTok and YouTube and everywhere else. Thank you, Marie. The way we do it in the meantime is if somebody really wants to get a question and wants to support my work, thank you, Chad, for the orange, and Elizabeth and Bonnie. Lots of TikTok gifts today. If you really want to get a question in and want to support my work, you could always buy a super chat question on YouTube, which is a way of donating to support my work. But also, thank you, Charles. I always will get to a super chat question immediately. The next thing I talk about is a thank you. I do this full time. As I've said before, I do it for free. So in order to be able to do this full time, I rely on your guys' gifts. So please do keep them coming. All right. Thank you, Adam. Let's get rolling. So, and Anna, thank you. Anna just signed up as a new member over on YouTube. Thank you for that. You can become a monthly subscriber on YouTube as well via the little, I think it's a $sign by the comment box. But take a look if you guys can. Thank you, Ellie. So today is day 579 of Vladimir Putin's special 3-day military operation in Ukraine. A lot of good news today, actually, guys. The first Abrams tanks arrived. These are the American tanks, the M1A1s that we've been waiting for. The U.S. agreed in January to send them. Remember, there was that whole row with Germany, and the Germans weren't coming along. Well, I appreciate that, Anna. The Germans weren't coming along, and then finally the Germans came along and said, well, we'll give tanks if the Americans do. And suddenly it was the Americans going, well, we don't want to give tanks, right? Thank you, Ben. And then the Americans finally came along. Well, the American tanks finally have begun to arrive. Thank you, Ben, and who is it, Nathan as well. This was good news. So the Americans have pledged 31 Abrams tanks. Around 8 or 10 should have arrived already in country. That was the latest that I saw that was being described, because it was several was sort of the way it was described, but some analyses said they think 8 or 10. Thank you, Nancy and Ben, for the gifts. Anyway, that's good. 31 are coming in total, so it's a good start. Another piece of really good news, it appears, okay, you remember on Friday we talked about the Ukrainian attack on the Russian naval base in Sevastopol, Crimea, in the south of Crimea. And the Ukrainians have been going nuts on Crimea overall, right? This is the territory the Russians stole in 2014. And Sevastopol, down here, a big Russian naval base. It's their naval headquarters for the whole Black Sea, for the sea down here. And the Ukrainians attacked, did a cruise missile attack, probably did a storm shadow. Basically, well, that's probably, we know they did. They did a storm shadow scalp attack, which are the French and the British weapons, very similar weapons, and blew the hell out of the headquarters. I mean, destroyed the Russian Navy headquarters. Well, the Ukrainians came out today. Earlier, they were not able to say with certainty who was killed. Now they have. And the Ukrainians said that in addition to, let me get the numbers here, in addition to 100 wounded, 62 dead in the Russian military headquarters, 33 officers killed, 33 or 34 officers killed, and the commander of the Black Sea Fleet, or at least one of the commanders of the Russian Black Sea Fleet, was killed in the attack, which is a huge deal. This is the highest level military or naval official killed, I think, well, maybe not anywhere, but almost anywhere, certainly in Russia since World War II. Big deal. What is interesting about this is the Ukrainians are now saying that there was a meeting taking place of this naval commander and his top staff, and all of them got killed. Now, that, of course, begs the question of how did the Ukrainians know, right? They knew when to hit. They knew that there was a meeting taking place with this guy and his top staff, and that's why they hit it when they hit it. That's some pretty darn good intelligence. The next story, also good intelligence. Remember last week, the Ukrainians hit 2 ships in the dry docks. I'm adjusting my temperature in my room as I talk to you guys. Now it's a little too cold. My thermometer always goes back and forth between hot and cold, hot and cold. Well, remember last week, the Ukrainians also hit Sevastopol, and they hit the dry docks. And the dry docks, people make fun of me when I said it's a dock that's dry, but honestly, as somebody who's not a military guy, terms like dry dock, I never quite knew. But it's literally an area of the dock where there's no water, and they work on ships and things. Well, the Ukrainians hit the dry docks, and they destroyed a submarine, and they destroyed a landing ship, okay? I know Daniel, everybody on YouTube, I know it's not doing well. I already refreshed. There's nothing I can do about it. So I appreciate it, but just stop commenting on it because it's throwing me. I mean, I realize it, but there's nothing I can do. So I already refreshed. It's not going to get any better. Actually, you know what I'll do on YouTube? I'm going to refresh it one more time, and that's it. There we go. Okay, that's all I can do now. All right, guys, let me keep going here. So yeah, I don't mean don't give me feedback, but there's nothing else I can do for you YouTubers, etc. And it only confuses me when I keep seeing the feedback because there's nothing I can do. So thank you, I appreciate it though. All right, so let's check this out. Okay, this was another really big hit the Ukrainians did. Thank you, Carol. So the Ukrainians hit the Russian naval port. They hit the headquarters on Friday, and before that, they hit the dry dock where ships were being repaired. They hit a submarine that was being repaired. That with the Rostov-on-Don destroyed. Pretty much from the damage assessments, looked like it's gone. $200 to $300 million submarine gone. Thank you, Scott. They hit a landing ship called the Minsk, and the landing ship I believe, has missiles, among other things. So it's actually very useful for the Russians. Thank you, Elizabeth and Nathan. It's useful for the Russians for hitting and Scott for hitting the Ukrainians with missiles, things like that. Well, we now find out from Ukrainians that the Minsk, the landing ship that was blown up, looks like it was, and this is again the intelligence. Thank you, Dawn. The intelligence, and by intelligence I don't mean smarts. I mean intelligence as in spy work that the Ukrainians are doing here. One report I saw said it looked like the Minsk was going back out to sea the next day. It had already been repaired. And because it was going out to sea, the crew was already there. Thank you, Lise. They were already there either sleeping or working or whatever. Thank you, Dora. And 62 Russian sailors were killed in the attack on the Minsk. I mean, that's absolutely, Minsk. That's absolutely amazing. Thank you, Dawn and Adventures and Dora. I mean, that's pretty wild. You're talking, not only did the Ukrainians hit some important ships here, okay? Thank you, Mustard. But they also took out a lot of Russians. I mean, so look back at this, right? So we're talking the military headquarters, 61 killed, including now it looks, thank you, Jeremy, including now it looks like the commander, which is a big deal, of the Black Sea Fleet, and his top staff, huge deal. Then it looks like when they hit the landing ship, thank you, Adventurers, they took out 62 sailors. Now, what's interesting, especially about the commander, let's go back to this again. If, in fact, this is true, but it's looking like it's true, and the Ukrainians are saying it is true now, which means they got further intelligence that told them it's true. They took out the top guy in the region, okay? But they also took out his senior staff. They were all in a big meeting, all of them. Well, the Russians are so top down, right? They don't empower people on the sort of soldiers on the bottom to basically think for themselves. So the soldiers on the bottom, they just kind of, they're like automatons. They're little robots. They do what they're told to do. But when they've got to work on their own independently, you know, thank you, Chad. It's almost like one of those sci-fi movies when they kill the, you know, it's like the Borg queen, but, you know, where basically they kill the queen, whatever, and then none of the other drones are able to do anything. Thank you, Bonnie. It kind of works that way with the Russians to some degree. The lower level staff don't know what to do. So you've now taken out the top military guy in the region, we believe, and his senior staff. That means the region is in chaos, which is great. And again, how the hell did they know? How did they know this guy was having a meeting? Thank you, Big John. How did they know he was having a meeting with his staff at the time they hit? They've got very good intelligence. Somebody on the inside is either telling them or they've got it bugged or something, but amazing the kind of intelligence the Ukrainians have here. Another big hit. Oh, this was hilarious. I say hilarious. I mean, I don't mean to say hilarious. This stuff is deadly serious, but at the same time, when I tell you this next story, you're going to say, this is kind of wild. Listen to this. The Kursk region of Russia is more or less up here, okay, from Ukraine, so across the border, a decent amount up here. And a Ukrainian drone is on the attack. The Russians, as they do, try counter warfare. The Russians and the Ukrainians are constantly trying to not just hit each other's drones out of the sky, but also electronically jam the drones so they can either knock it out of control or even better, take over the drone. Sometimes they'll literally break through and take over the drone of the other guys. So the Russians will take over Ukrainian drones, Ukrainians will take over Russian drones. Well, in this case, in this Russian region, the Russians managed to take over the Ukrainian drone and they flew it to their base and they landed it. And they were so proud of themselves for grabbing this prize Ukrainian drone. They got the top staff together, members of the FSB, which is like the Russian spy service, like the KGB follow on. Thank you, Nathan. The senior officials all got together to take pictures of the drone and also to analyze it, to start to, you know, check it out and everything. And as soon as they did that, the Ukrainians blew it up. It was a Trojan horse. Now, I hope this story is true. I mean, I'm telling you because, you know, it's out there. The Ukrainians are claiming it. Thank you, Kanausi. But absolutely, it's actually quite brilliant and something the Russians should have thought of because it is true. They've already been taking over each other's drones. So actually, it is something you ought to worry about when the drone, like when you've taken it over, have you really taken it over? But yeah, in this case, they landed it. They all came around to look at, imagine also the drone operator. Imagine the Ukrainians like looking at their camera and literally watching and waiting for these guys to come up to it, and then just blew it up. Absolutely wild. Absolutely wild. Adjusting my temperature again in my room. It was so warm in here before the show started, and now I'm freezing. It's like, stop. Anyway, wild story. Again, what is interesting to me with all of this is how many wild stories we're hearing from Ukraine in the last week, or last 2 weeks. As always, I will say this doesn't mean they're going to win, right? We hope they win. This is certainly better news than bad news, right? What is interesting to me is there's almost some kind of momentum going on in the last week, especially with all of these attacks the Ukrainians are doing, and they're doing it successfully, right? Taking out the submarine, taking out the ship. Now we find the ship had 62 or some crew on it, taking out the military headquarters, and we find out that there were 60 plus people there, right? And the commander was there. And they took out the S-400, which is the big anti-aircraft system that was a hugely expensive, important system. That got blown up. They knock out a submarine that has worth almost $300 million. Like, all of this in the last week is really good. And I would say, it's not just good from a morale perspective. Thank you, Delafleur, for all of us. And frankly, we need it too, right? The people supporting Ukraine need to feel like it's working. Otherwise, possibly you won't help. Even the fundraisers I do for Ukraine, right? If you think they're losing, you might say, what's the point in giving, right? So that kind of positive morale helps, but it really helps the Ukrainians. Thank you, Jeremy, because if you're Ukrainian citizens, you're sitting there getting bombed every day. And if you feel like it's not going anywhere, you start to get despondent, and that doesn't help, right? And finally, the Ukrainian troops, the same thing. They're like you and me too. The military folks among us can tell you better than I, but morale matters in the military. And these kind of attacks in the last week help Ukraine's morale overall, and they really hurt Russian morale, which is great. Anyway, big deal on that. Few more. Oh, and then this was another attack they did last week. Russia's 14th Guards Fighter Aviation Regiment was inside a building of the Kalino airfield near Kursk at the time it was hit by a drone on September 24th. That's another one that makes me suspicious. Why would you just happen to go after an airfield, right? Thank you, user 2119, in Russia, and you go after it when they just happen to be having a meeting of a bunch of the fighters inside, a bunch of the pilots and soldiers. They've got great intelligence, and maybe the intelligence is getting better too, for that matter. In any case, big deal. Let me do a quick pitch for my stuff. There's not a ton of news today, but like I said, it's really good news. I've got another half of the news to come. Really quick. Thank you, Kankaranga. Please do keep the gifts coming, guys, on TikTok and YouTube and everywhere else. I appreciate it. As I always tell you guys, I do this for free. I've been doing it full time since the war broke out. And the way I'm able to do this is because I am not independently wealthy, but I've been able to devote my time full time to this because I've been able to monetize this with your guys' gifts here on TikTok and YouTube and elsewhere. Also with the memberships, which I want to mention really quick, like Anna just did on YouTube. You can sign up to be a monthly contributor, where basically you donate every month. You can do it with Patreon. You can do it with YouTube. You can do it with Twitch, with TikTok, Discord, Ko-fi. All of those links you guys can find. I'll move Anna's. You guys can find them at the bottom of my screen. There's Ko-fi, and then Aravosis.com will take you to all the other ones. For you guys, you can go to Aravosis.com on TikTok, or just go to my profile on TikTok. Look for the hyperlink, the whatever, I'm forgetting what it's called now, the URL in my profile. Click it, and you'll see everything come up there. You'll see Ko-fi, you'll see Discord, you'll see PayPal and Cash App, by the way, if you want to give one-time donations. But TreeLink, I always forget. Is that what it's? Linktree, Linktree. Thank you. I've been using it for a year now, Chuck, and I forgot what it's called. Thank you, Elizabeth. But if you check it out, consider it. I'd appreciate it, because it really helps to have sort of the monthly contributions coming in, because then I'm able to know how much is coming in. Never had dyslexia before, but I did see TreeLink. That's very funny. I guess that's how dyslexia works, doesn't it? Thank you, Ruben, for the gifts there. And Dawn for the wonderful, whatever they are. I'm tired today. I know they're not anemones. They're whatever they're, jellyfish. Thank you, Nancy. All right, few more stories. Russia, in retaliation for the attack on the naval headquarters, bombed Odessa again today. Odessa is in southern Ukraine. all the way down here. It is Ukraine's most important port. It's one of the only remaining ports that Ukraine still controls, and the Russians have been bombing it left and right in order to stop Ukraine from exporting grain. They went after the grain itself, warehouses. They went after the port facilities, and they even bombed a hotel, which was just classic Russian. Basically they went after a bunch of civilian targets, which is a war crime, in order to get revenge for the Ukrainians taking out a military base. Thank you, Chad, for that. It's just ridiculous. But classic Russian, right? Ukraine's economy grew by 19.5% compared to last year in the second quarter of 2023. Now, I won't get into sort of all the economic stuff, but that's a big deal. That's a lot of growth. And it suggests that maybe, it's only one quarter, but it suggests that maybe Ukraine's economy is starting to stabilize. Thank you, Happy Beach. With the war going on, I would not get, I know something about economics. We shouldn't just look at one quarter and think, okay, Ukraine's economy is doing better. But as I always say, thank you, Bonnie, it is better to have good news than bad news, even if it's a one-time thing, right? So let's wait and see if the economy keeps going well. But again, better the economy is doing better than the economy is doing worse. So it's still a nice data point. Thank you, Adam, for the gift there. The United Nations reports that Russia's torture methods in occupied parts of Ukraine have been so brutal that some victims have died. This came from the head of the UN-mandated investigative body today. There is, quote, continuous evidence that Russian forces are, quote, committing war crimes in Ukraine, the United Nations Human Rights Council said. The council alleged that attacks in Ukraine include, quote, unlawful attacks with explosive weapons, attacks harming civilians, torture, sexual and gender-based violence, and attacks on energy infrastructure. The Russian Interior Ministry, now this one's actually kind of funny. Classic Russian, well, we'll talk about it in a second. Let me tell you what they did first. The Russian Interior Ministry put the chairman of the International Criminal Court. The International Criminal Court is the guys who investigate Nazis, basically, right? Among other things. They're the ones who investigate war crimes. They're the ones who investigate crimes against humanity and try them. They're the ones, thank you, Chad, they're the ones who put Putin, they put out an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin for for kidnapping Ukrainian children and trying to turn them into Russians. Putin has been systematically stealing Ukrainian children as spoils of war. Some of them still have their parents, although even if they're orphans, you don't just go and steal children from the guy you're attacking. And then they bring them back to Russia. They tell them their family doesn't want them anymore and doesn't love them. And they try to brainwash them into becoming Russians. So, well, obviously, it's horrific. And Putin was indicted for war crimes as a result of it. So in response, the Russian Interior Ministry put the chairman of the International Criminal Court, his deputy, and a judge on their list of wanted people, on Russia's most wanted, because they're investigating Russia. The International Criminal Court, people, you don't get more sort of, I don't know what, than you do than the criminal court. This is where I said, like, there is something with the Russians that even I don't understand entirely. They're not like us. They don't think like us, right? Even if, even the U.S. has not signed up for to join the International Criminal Court because the American military worries they're going to come after American soldiers, et cetera, right? I don't know that I think that's a good thing. I'm not necessarily supporting the U.S. in that, but I certainly get why the U.S. is worried. Having said that, if the International Criminal Court were to come after American soldiers for war crimes, okay, some Americans would say, that's valid if they committed the crime. Other Americans would say, we don't want them. We don't like these international guys. I guarantee you, nobody in America is going to put out an arrest warrant for the judges running the International Criminal Court. Even with us not joining the criminal court, you would never see that happen. There is something I do not understand in the Russian psyche. They do things that just keep reminding you that they're not like us in terms of the way they approach these issues. And there is a very insecure, sophomoric, narcissistic but insecure approach to all of this that's really, really weird. The German, this was, okay, two more stories. The German newspaper Bild says that it will take Ukrainians 3 months to learn how to operate the German Taurus cruise missile system. That's according to the Taurus's manufacturer. The Taurus is a cruise missile that I believe goes like 300 miles, 200 kilometers. It's, or excuse me, 200 miles, 300 kilometers. There we go. And it is actually, I shouldn't say that. The number 300 is in my head. Does anybody remember? Is the Taurus 300 miles or 200 miles? Now I'm forgetting because the number 300 was in my head, but I don't know if it's because I read a European thing that was saying it. I think it's 300 kilometers. In any case, it pretty much goes a similar distance. Well, probably depends which one too, Mustard, right? Well, okay, two problems. Mustard saying he thought 500. It could depend. Sometimes there's variance. So sometimes there's different systems. Sometimes sometimes I get it wrong. So that could be the problem too. It is also possible that it's always likely, actually, thank you, Life. It is always likely that whatever a country says publicly about the abilities of its system is much less than it actually can do. So if they say 200 miles, they can go 250 or whatever, right? Frank Thomas is saying 300 miles, but can be dialed back. Okay. In any case, these weapons are not dissimilar to the French cruise missiles, the British cruise missiles, the American ATACMS missiles that were just provided. But for some reason, the Germans are still kind of playing games and not wanting to provide them, and it's not clear why. Finally, according to the Washington Post, a bipartisan group of United States senators visited Ukraine recently and said there is no evidence that weapons provided by Washington are making their way onto the black market. This was a talking point that the pro-Russian crowd was trying to put out there, claiming that, oh my God, the Ukrainians are giving our weapons on the black market to crazy terrorists and stuff. And bipartisan group of United States senators, Democrats and Republicans went and said there's no evidence at all. As for the ATACMS, because somebody that was the last story, but I'll answer this really quick. You guys were asking about ATACMS. In fact, we found out on Friday, but it has not been confirmed. But the American news is reporting that Biden has okayed a small number, that was the quote, a small number of ATACMS missiles to go to Ukraine. We don't know how many. The Biden administration refuses to confirm this publicly. They were asked about it again today, and once again, they refused to confirm it. That worries me a little because the story is already out there. There was a story, thank you, Kahala, and this could be true. One story that was out there, I think from Financial Times this weekend out of London, claiming that the reason the White House doesn't want to confirm that the ATACMS missiles are going to Ukraine soon is because they don't want to give the Russians a head up, and the Russians therefore move all their supplies further away, right? If the Russians know, the Ukrainians are now able to hit this distance versus a shorter distance, they might move further back. Maybe. It still worries me a little that the Biden folks are not confirming it, but nonetheless, that's what we hear. Let me do a quick pitch for my auctions, and then let's do questions. This is good. Today, we were on a normal time schedule today. There wasn't a ton of news, but it was very good news. So one of the things I do to sort of help support my work and support Ukraine, guys, is I've got a number of really cool auctions running over at Discord. Our Discord community is discord.aravosis.com. You can find the link on TikTok via my link tree in my profile, but that link, you can't click through. It's kind of a mess. So you have to type it in your browser separately, discord.aravosis.com. You guys can find it at aravosis.com. You'll be fine. But basically, I get a lot of cool stuff from Ukraine. I auction it off. 50% of the winning bid we send back to Ukraine. Actually, I was going to show. Well, I can show you later. We just got confirmation that the spare parts have now been purchased and handed over to the ambulances. We raised money for spare parts for Ukrainian ambulances that are helping the military and the public. We got them spare parts and spare tires. Those are now with them. Also, this weekend, we delivered the sniper training tools. They needed like a scope, a distance, some kind of distance scope for judging the distance to the target, and also a weather kit for predicting the weather and knowing the wind speeds and everything else. And we were able to they got it this weekend. So thank you for your donations for that. In any case, we've got a number of auction items over at the Discord community. I will show you just a couple of them. The auctions end on Wednesday. This is one. It's from a really nice, pretty Ukrainian sort of folkloric kind of piece. And I always, every time I come on with you guys, I forget what it's called. Somebody Ukrainian tell me the style. but a very traditional design. Thank you, Mark Starr. That is known particularly in the Dnipro region, I believe. There's a village where all the houses used to be painted inside. Petrikivka, thank you, Darcia, used to be painted on the inside and outside like this. I think I know because of the war, a lot of the walls and everything were moved because they were afraid of the Russians bombing it. But this piece is up for auction. Original hand painted from Ukraine. Thank you, Encore, for that. Second thing is a piece of a Russian fighter bomber, an Su-34. This I got very cool from Ukraine. It is, here we go. It is a piece from a Russian plane shot down over Ukraine, an Su-34, which is a fighter bomber. What is neat about this piece is you can see at the top, I'll show you guys in a second, the electronics are still here. Some of the electronics you see there. And I had one of our wonderful, you guys can see the electronics at the top here. Oops, there you go, up here. We had one of our wonderful worst best gamers, one of our folks here who is a former U.S. military aviation engineer. He took a look and immediately goes, that's from an igniter. That's from a starter. So he says this is a starter box for the fighter bomber, basically like the ignition box where the spark begins or whatever it is that starts the fuel on fire, like in a gas engine or a diesel engine. So, but I like this just because I like the way it's mangled, because you can tell it's mangled from being shot down. But also, as I said, I love the fact that it's got like an electronics part on it. Anyway, this is up for auction. We've got and this one I'm trying not to sort of touch anymore. A very cool not painted, it's batik, Ukrainian, I say Easter egg, but they're eggs that are now used for Easter. It is pisanka. It is a Ukrainian technique going back before the Christian era in Ukraine. And it's batik. They take a stylus with wax, they paint the egg, and then they dip it in various colors. And where the wax is, you don't get color. And then this is a single color, but I love this one because I think it's really classy with an angel there being single color. But what's neat about it, as I said, it's wax, and they dip it. The egg is hollow. This is a goose egg because it's larger. It's about 3.5 inches. It's larger than a regular egg. I really don't want to take it out and keep handling it. If you go and you check out my Discord, you'll see pictures of all sides of the egg, but I don't want to keep touching it because I'm afraid of getting it dirty because it's white. But I love this. And the backside has flowers. It's really, I just think it's just stunning. It comes with a little stand. And the final thing, I've got 11 different things for auction. The final thing I'll show you, which is super popular, is this patch for the Azov battalion. And this has been doing very well. I got this recently. It's from Ukraine. And it is a military patch for the Ukrainian heroes, basically. The group that withstood the Russian assault on Mariupol. Remember that big story for about 2 months, how there were 2,000 Ukrainian troops that were holding back 14,000 Russian troops at the steel plant, the Azov-style steel plant in Mariupol? I believe half of the 2,000 troops were with the Azov battalion, these guys. The other half were regular Ukrainian, other battalions of the Ukrainian military. Thank you, Jalopy. Any case, these guys have been super popular with, thank you, Delaney, with the bidders. And this is a neat patch. And it says, was it special? I forget. Special battalion, is it? What is it, guys? Spets Pidrozdil? I don't remember what that means, though. And then Ukraini there and Azov on top. So this is very cool, very popular. And that's it. I won't show you anything else right now. But like I said, I've got 11 things up on the Discord. Go check it out, discord.aravosis.com. Feel free to bid. Shipping internationally. You pay shipping, but I ship internationally. And it's a lot of cool stuff. I've got other really neat. Actually, the one thing I'll show you, because I finally did it, was the shot glass, which I'm now using as a toothpick holder. It's a Ukrainian shot glass that says Ukraine on the top. And as I figured, it's great. I'm not really a drinker, but for toothpicks, it's fabulous. So just because I think this one's really pretty, and I love like the idea of having something really pretty on your table or your kitchen that's small, but it's small, but it's pretty, kind of, Anyway, all right, guys, let's keep going. So thank you, Jose and Jalopy. Keep the gifts coming, and let's do questions or comments or whatever. I drink, but I don't really enjoy drinking. Thank you, Nicola. So I just don't drink that much. It kind of, just makes me sleepy. Thank you, Happy Beach. I'm a big believer that like alcohol affects people differently. I think it really does. For me, chocolate does for me what alcohol does for other people. Chocolate and sugar. Chocolate and sugar make me so happy and high and everything else. Alcohol kind of hurts my stomach, hurts my head. It just does. It makes me sleepy. And I'm like, what good is that? Thank you, Allie. Whereas chocolate, yes, that makes me happy. St. Petersburg power outage and explosions. I am not aware of those, Dwight. What's going on with St. Petersburg? That's pretty cool, though. Thank you, Timothy Leary. Was there something out with I don't know that I saw that this weekend. I don't know that. Magical is asking about possible government shutdown in the U.S. and how it will affect aid to Ukraine. Story I was seeing said that the big problem isn't the weapons themselves, because it looks like the weapons won't be held or anything if the U.S. government shuts down because we run out of money. There's a budget dispute. Actually, the budget dispute right now is among Republicans. Republicans aren't able to pass the budget because the hardline Trumpers want to shut the government down. It's kind of crazy. Well, what they found was magical, that at least an article last week in Politico said that the real danger for Ukraine isn't that the weapons themselves can't be sent because the shutdown stops it. It's that if the shutdown happens, and this was something that I guessed about a few weeks ago, if the shutdown happens, you've got to worry about the people flying the planes, the people mechanic. I mean, basically a number of the staff that might not be as important, the logistics staff, might not be able to work. And if they don't work, then we might not be able to ship stuff to Ukraine. So that could be a problem. But I don't think we know yet. And I'm sure the Pentagon is trying to figure out how to get around it, but we just don't know. So there you go. What else we got, guys? More questions, more comments. Thank you, Anna, again for the membership. It's like I said, it's been a good day for Ukraine today. I mean, just good news from last week too. Like I said, how do we punish bad allies like Turkey and Hungary and get them to stop obstructing us? Jackie asks. I don't. That's a tough one. First of all, Turkey is a little easier because Turkey's a funny one because Turkey wants stuff. Turkey wants to be a PITA, but they also want stuff. So they want better and more NATO fighter jets. They don't want the Greeks to get weapons, but they want themselves to get weapons. So the U.S. has, especially not NATO, U.S. fighter jets, the U.S. has leverage there. Now, Turkey has leverage back because Turkey keeps playing games with Sweden. Now, the Turkish parliament is out until next week or so. They've been on vacation for 2 months. So there hasn't been any ability to move forward on Sweden joining NATO because Turkey has to approve. So does Hungary. But we have to wait until the Turkish parliament comes back. I think they're going to keep playing games. And the question becomes, Turkey wants the American fighters. The Americans in NATO want Sweden to join NATO. What Turkey's trying to do, and I think there's zero chance of it, Turkey is basically trying to, and they're not saying this, but I think this is exactly what's going on. Turkey's trying to join the European Union. They've been trying for 20 years. They haven't been able to because Turkey invaded Cyprus. Actually, I now have, thanks to Ava, we have a new map. Ava did a nice little map of Europe, showing Ukraine here, but as part of Europe. It's a bit busy, but Europe's busy, so there's no way around it. But I can show you on the new Ava map where Cyprus is. So Cyprus is going to be down, more or less down here. It's hard to sort of more or less down here, okay, in the Aegean, in the Mediterranean. Turkey's here. Cyprus is down here. Cyprus is an independent country. They are majority Greek ethnic. They speak Greek, but they are independent. And basically, the Greeks effed around, had a coup in 1973, and the Turks kind of got even and invaded. The Turks took the top third of the island, cut it off from the bottom third, declared it independent. It's not independent. The Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus or something they called it. They're the only country that no one recognizes it as independent. And basically Greece said, okie dokie, you want to join the European Union? It's never happening until you free Northern Cyprus. So that's what's going on with Cyprus. There is a 0% chance that a Greek government would survive if it okayed Turkey getting European Union membership without returning Cyprus to the Cypriots. Zero chance. Thank you, Jim Alt. I mean, zero chance. So it's not happening. But that's what I think Erdogan is doing. And the question is, Downey Chick, the map, just to show folks, the map Ava did by hand. Ava designed this by hand. I'll show you closely. But it's really cool. I mean, it's nice. You kind of have to look closely with the sea and stuff, but it's nice because I like it because I can also show Ukraine, Belarus, Poland, bordering Ukraine, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, the Black Sea. When we talked about the ships leaving Ukraine, right? They leave Ukraine, they pass Romania here, then they pass Bulgaria, then they get to the straits here. These are the straits we talk about where Turkey, they're able to cut through the Turkish straits and then get into the Aegean, right? It's beautiful. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So it is very helpful. So thank you, Ava. I just got it on its board right before the show for you guys, thinking I might need it. Well, we still have the other map of Ukraine. This is the larger map of the European area, the continent that Ava did. Beautiful work. Yeah, it's beautiful. Anyway, so, Hungary is its own problem. Hungary, the idiot running Hungary, I really think he wants to be a Soviet dictator. He wishes Hungary was the way it was before. He wishes Hungary was part of the Soviet Empire, brutal, murderous. Yeah, thanks, Marie. I know we got it on Amazon and they weren't selling it. My sister got me it on Amazon. They weren't selling them anymore. I have to look and see if they're still selling again, but they stopped selling them, but they're a really nice mug and it's a nice size. Thank you, Jonathan. Marie from Ukraine was saying she likes my mug and I like it because the size is nice too. So I like big mugs. Anyway, but with Hungary, Hungary has, free elections. The Hungarian people wanted this jerk back. It's a mess. It's a mess. He's an authoritarian. He's honestly making Putin comments about Ukraine, which are kind of Hitler comments. Hitler did the same thing. He's pulling the same garbage Putin did, which was the Hitler thing of, Hungarian ethnic groups in Ukraine are being oppressed. Well, I read about this. I read about this today. Listen to this. The Orban, who's the prime minister or whatever of Hungary and kind of, like I said, wannabe dictator, horrible, very bad about NATO, very bad about Ukraine. He is upset that the Ukrainians are requiring that English, check this out, okay? They're requiring English be the main language in their high schools. Okay, right? Like, I could see the Russians getting a little annoyed because there is a Russian-speaking contingent in Ukraine. So, okay, the Russians might not like it. Fair enough. Maybe, and again, the Ukrainians would have to answer this one, right? Maybe the Russians get upset. But the Hungarians? There is a Hungarian ethnic group, about 80,000 people. And under Ukrainian law, they have to study in high school in Ukrainian. Well, they're Hungarian. What, he wants them to study in high school in Hungarian? That's ridiculous, okay? You could at least make an argument for the Russian speakers if you wanted to, right? Like Vlad grew up, because again, I'm not going to get into the whole language thing in Ukraine because it's over my head, right? This is for Ukrainians, but maybe you make an argument at least that it's like Canada, right? Where you've got two languages side by side in the country, French and English. But Hungarian? There's no reason Ukrainian schools should be teaching in Hungarian. Well, that's why he's upset, because he says the Hungarian minority is being oppressed. He's an idiot. He's just an absolute idiot. That's interesting. In Europe, it's normal. All ethnic minorities have access to education in their language of choice. I think that's a problem. In America, we have that debate too. I think it's a problem. It's funny. My mom, long story here, but mom came to the States when she was 8 years old from Greece, from a village in Greece, certainly never studied. None of them studied English. And she was 8. In America, that means she should have been in 3rd grade. They threw her into 1st grade as an 8-year-old, when all the other kids were 5 and 6. And because she didn't speak English, and they just made her learn English in class. And she literally just was in school, normal school, and just had to pick up English. But again, this was the late 1930s. They were used to this. This is what you just did it. And you know what? She did well enough that she then got double promoted. So she made it back to her level, her equal level. And of all things, she became a teacher and was even teaching English among other subjects. So I'm not very sympathetic to the notion of teaching people in their own language in a country, unless it's, France, where it's French and English. Okay, obviously it's literally both languages are official languages, but otherwise, I don't think so. I'm not going to get, this is obviously a whole other topic. At the most you do is you help kids along, right? I could absolutely, I speak Spanish. I absolutely could see kind of mixing the language a little to help kids along. Sure. But you don't just give them class in Spanish or give them class in Hungarian. No way. It's just not, you're just not going to do it that way. Well, again, do you want to create a national identity or not? That's the danger, In any case, yeah, Hungary is a problem, guys. It's a problem. Anyway, I do speak Spanish, but not my native tongue. English is my native tongue. So I speak it fluently, yes. But I also speak French and Spanish and Italian and Greek in varying degrees. What else we got, guys? What else we got? More questions. Assuming direct hits, how many ATACMS are needed to permanently take out the Kerch Bridge? ATACMS are not the weapon of choice, is what everyone's telling me. My name is Greek. So somebody was asking. The better weapon for taking out the Kerch Bridge, we talked about this before with some of the experts, are Storm Shadow or British Storm Shadow or French Scalp cruise missiles. Callum, who is usually with us, who's our British munitions expert, Callum said you basically would need about 12 Storm Shadow cruise missiles in order to do it well. And he was talking about basically, you want to hit the support pillars. So in other words, not just the roads on top, because the road on top, they literally just repair. They make a new plank of road and they put it right on there, right? So it's like the Hot Wheels we had as kids or whatever, like the piece of road you connect together, that's what they would do. So you don't want the piece of road bombed because they can fix that. You want to bomb the support structures underneath. And he said he would use 12 Storm Shadows or Scalps, cruise missiles. He would use 2 per pillar and knock out the pillars. And that way you've knocked out so many of the pillars that good luck at that point, good luck. So, but that's what people are saying. They're saying not really that. What else we got? Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, the Solak is saying there's an article on Ukraine's new underwater drone. Is that the one that they're calling like the Sea Baby or the Tadpole or whatever? I don't remember. We did see this was in the news on CNN about a month, maybe 6 weeks ago, because they showed pictures of it. Oh no, not the underwater one. We didn't see the underwater one. We saw the top of the water. I don't think we saw the underwater one. That's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. Who will win the war? The problem is there are Callum is here today. The problem is there are too many variables that can easily change, meaning the degree to which we aid Ukraine will affect whether Ukraine can win. How many weapons are we giving them? How quickly are we giving them the weapons? I'm trying to think what else. How quickly, what kind, how much, how many of the weapons we give. That's going to affect, we slowed down. We've gone slow from the beginning thank you, Olga. We went slow from the beginning in terms of the weapons we were providing Ukraine, right? We kept haggling about every single system. No, we don't want to do it. And then 3 months later, we do it. And then even then, it took forever. Like right now, they're finally getting the tanks. We agreed to the tanks in January. It's been 10 months, okay? Almost 10 months now. And we're finally getting them some tanks. That's going slowly, makes it harder for Ukraine to win. If we provide Ukraine all the weapons it needs and we do it quickly, they can win the war. But we have to decide we want them to win the war. And I think the Brits want them to win and the Americans want a tie, because the Americans are afraid of what Biden is afraid of, what Putin will do if Putin loses. So it's hard to tell you who's going to win and when, because I think it's up to us. And I don't think Biden's head is there yet. He wants Ukraine not to lose. He doesn't yet want them to win. Especially because of Crimea. I think he's terrified of Ukraine actually taking back Crimea. I think so. Daniel, thank you. What was the, oh yeah, Daniel saying, I am Romanian. We had big land in Ukraine. The people still speak Romanian. Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. Well, from what I was seeing too, I was looking at something the other day showing Poland's land before World War II. And I want to say like Poland, am I right with this? Poland had land, I can use Ava's map, that basically Poland's here, but it had land like into Belarus. It had land into Ukraine. And I think it even had some land of Lithuania before the war. And all of that got lost in World War II. So, I mean, you know, for a lot of these countries, it hasn't been that long. You know what I mean? It hasn't been that long. But, you know, hopefully they keep it good. Any update on the Russian recruitment efforts? I don't know what you mean. I mean, they keep trying to get people to recruit in the occupied territories, you know, but we know that. CBS 60 Minutes piece, I didn't see it. What was on 60 Minutes last night? I know Putin was trying to talk about Poland getting its land back. I did see that. That was funny. That was very funny. But I didn't see what was on 60 Minutes last night. Doesn't Biden's fear of Putin give Putin power over Biden's decisions? Yes. Yes. That's why it ticks me off. Yes. Biden is not, look, Biden is not a terrible president. Here's the problem. Thank you, Wayne. And thank you, Adventures. You know, not Wayne, but thank you, Wayne, anyway. But Adventures for the gift. Biden is not a terrible president. But, and I don't think he's indecisive. I think his view of international relations and domestic as well is making deals. He believes in making deals. And I think no matter what, Biden, and there's something to be said for this in politics. He thinks you cut a deal and then later you can cut another deal. And Obama was an adherent of this to some degree. Get what you can now and get more later if you can. The problem with Biden is it makes him, I think, in addition to wanting a deal with Ukraine, he's afraid of Putin. He's afraid of Putin. And when I say afraid, he's afraid of he's not afraid of Putin, but he's afraid of what Putin will do. He thinks Putin's going to use nukes. He does. He thinks there's a decent chance Putin could use nukes, which I think is crazy. You know, it's absolutely crazy. This is funny. Sorry, a friend of mine is texting me that she's in town already and wants to get dinner, and I tell her I can't do it tonight. Oh, good, she's close by at least. Hold on. Oops. I'll call her afterwards. Old friend from graduate school who's wonderful. She's funny. What else though? What else? But yeah, no, anyway, so I think he's afraid of what Putin will do, and I think he's wrong on that. I think he's wrong on it. You know, I do not think Putin is, I don't think Putin's going to nuke us. I really don't. I think it would be idiotic of him. I don't think Putin's stupid, and he's certainly not crazy. There is no rational reason Putin is going to use nukes. No rational reason. And it's quite the opposite. Putin uses nukes in Ukraine, he gets us in the war. NATO enters the war if he does that. And if NATO enters the war, he loses. So why would he do that? Right? He definitely doesn't want to lose Crimea. But if you make it clear, we will go to war if you start using nukes, he ain't going to do it. The problem though becomes, have Biden, among other ones, made it so clear to Putin that we fear him, that we fear he'll use nukes, that it makes it more likely for Putin to use nukes, right? That's the thing that worries me. Anyway, Russia put 3,000 troops on nuclear alert. I don't care. I don't mean that to you, but I mean, I don't care. So what? It doesn't mean anything. It just doesn't matter. Russia, to Steve, I mean, and I told folks this before, Russia, it is Vladimir Putin's job to do everything short of launching a nuke to convince you that he's going to launch a nuke. He needs to convince us he's going to go nuclear, because that's the only way he can stop Biden from giving Ukraine more weapons, better weapons, etc. Right? It's the only way. It's the only way. So if nobody cares. I mean, literally don't care. Short of Putin launching a nuke, I don't care because he's lying. Thank you, JRD. It's all one big lie from them. He needs to scare you into thinking he's going to use nukes. And again, and I will say this, the other experts don't like it when people say definitively, sure, there's a chance Putin could use a nuke. There's also a chance space aliens will come down and stop the war from happening. There's a chance. But I think it's totally irrational and illogical for Putin to use nukes. And unless somebody can give me a rational explanation for why Putin would use them, I don't think they're likely to be used at all. So I do not have someone at the White House to tell this to. No, I have a friend at the White House. He does not handle Ukraine, unfortunately. Anyway. Oh, what else we got, guys? Do I think politicians still want to go back to trading with Russia pre-war? It depends. The MAGA politicians do here in the States. In Europe, there's certainly a lot of Germans who do. There's probably a lot of French companies who do, right? Sasha mugs. I could make Sasha mugs. Yeah. The mugs don't really make a lot of money. I looked at doing them on Red Button. What the hell is it called? But the markup is so bad. They're so expensive and the amount you get is so small that I kind of just never used it. But I could. Do I believe Biden's playing devil's advocate? I guess depends what you mean. Like to whom? You know what I mean? I'm not explain in what way who's he devil's advocating. I don't get. I'm not sure I get it. Did hear that about the Canadian Parliament. It's an interesting story though. So Darcy is saying, so when Biden goes to the when Zelensky goes to the Canadian Parliament, he met with Biden last week in the US and then went to Canada Friday, I want to say, and goes to the Canadian Parliament, gives a speech, I think he gave a speech, and there's a standing ovation for like a 93 or 97-year-old Canadian guy who was Ukrainian born and fought against the Soviets, right? Well, 98. Okay. They discover later that he fought against the Soviets because he joined the Nazis. He joined the Germans. The only thing there, and they all had to apologize. What is interesting about that story, and I did not hear about this guy earlier, but I'd heard about Ukrainians doing this. And think how bad the Soviet occupation had to be that he's not the only Ukrainian who did this. Think of how bad and the Soviets were the Russians, basically, okay? Think of how brutal the Russian occupation was of Ukraine. For Ukrainians to see the Nazis and think, this is a better alternative. Like, I'm actually going to help these guys stop the Soviets because the Soviets are so much worse than Nazis. And that's something people should think about, right? I'm not sure you exonerate the guy. I get it, all of that kind of stuff, right? But when you look at how bad the Soviets were, exactly, the starvation, they literally Stalin killed millions of Ukrainians by starving them to death. It speaks volumes. The other point I will raise is, who did the Russians just have a funeral for? The number 2 guy in the Wagner group after Prigozhin, who was a Nazi. And he had Nazis tattoos like SS on his thing and everything else. Total freaking Nazi. Horrible who this guy was. And the Russians were happy, absolutely happy to embrace him. The Russians love embracing Nazis. And then they like to bottom point, actually, last little point to raise. You know who was a bigger supporter of the Nazis than this guy in Canada? Russia. World War II. Stalin gets together, right, with Hitler, and they sign a little secret treaty with their foreign ministers, Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. And they sign a little treaty where they agree they're not going to attack each other so that it gives each other permission to start World War II. And the Russians, they're both going to attack Poland and divide it in half. They gave the Germans permission to attack the rest of Europe and do what the Germans did, start World War II. It gave the Russians permission to basically attack Eastern Europe and steal, which Russia did, and stole all of Eastern Europe and kidnapped them for 45 years of brutal dictatorships, the people who were the real friends of the Nazis were the Russians. And that's the thing. We absolutely, the Canadians screwed up. But for Russia to sit there and pretend like, and they did. Oh, they're so outraged. They were so outraged today. Russia was outraged that their ally Hitler, I mean, Russia did far more than this guy did to help the Nazis. Far more. And Putin to this day embraces Nazis when it serves his interests, like the Wagner Group, which was in part created by a Nazi. And Putin was happy to welcome the guy. So, the Russians are hypocrites about that stuff. So always helpful to remind people. That's exactly what I just said, Roger. Yeah. He joined the Nazis to try to help Ukrainian independence. And you know what? A number of Ukrainians did. Because guess what? The Nazis were, the Russians were worse than the Nazis. Thank you, Super Hornet. I will say, too, what bothers me about this story to some degree is it's also one of those stories which we do a lot today. We're supposed to judge everything by today's standards and be very harsh and immediate, and don't be gray, right? Don't look at it and think that there's other... Oh, funny little troll. We're supposed to look at this and think that, obviously, nobody would work with the Nazis to fight the Russians. Who would work with a Nazi? Well, the Russians would. I mean, again, during World War II, your country's occupied by the Soviets. You might work with anybody to get rid of the Soviets. And then you deal with the next bad guy tomorrow, right? Things are a lot more complicated when you look at history and you're there. So, well, not a single person in America is alive. That's a stupid thing to say. Yeah. That's just dumb. Anyway, what else we got, guys? What else we got? Well, you have to do both. Roger says judge based on the ideals of the time. You have to do both. We've got to use, obviously we are who we are today. Okay. It's not like slavery's okay because it was okay at the time. You don't just judge things at the time, but you have to judge the time and judge when people were, and looking at it and say, for example, okay, I'm not thrilled at people who were bad on gay rights, but if you were bad on gay rights in the 1700s, probably most people were pretty bad on gay rights in the 1700s, right? Gay marriage, not very popular. Even the 1900s, not very popular. I'm not going to erase everybody from history who was bad on gay marriage because they were bad on gay marriage, when at the time it was kind of normal to be bad on gay marriage, right? That's an issue I can talk about, right? You've got to look at these issues in the historical context. But having said that, right, slavery still sucked. So you don't just say, well, in historical context, slavery was okay. No, but anyway, in any case, I know the trolls get freaked out. Thank you, Mike. Well, the trolls were particularly not happy because Ukraine killed a Russian commander of the Black Sea Fleet and blew up an entire ship worth of crew in addition to, so they're not very happy. What else we got? Thanks, Michael. Thank you, Frank. All right, should I do a quick recap, or what do you think, guys? What do you think? Should we do the recap? Let's do a recap. Let's do the recap. All right, recap. So these are the stories we covered today. Is day 579 of Putin's 3-day special military operation. The first U.S. Abrams tanks have arrived in Ukraine. U.S. officials say that as many as 8 or 10 actually have arrived already. The total arriving is 31. Total that are pledged are 31. 8 to 10 have arrived. Admiral Viktor Sokolov, commander of the Black Sea Fleet, is dead along with 61 others, including 33 officers, after the Ukrainians hit the naval headquarters last Friday in Sevastopol, Crimea. The crew of the Minsk, which is the landing ship the Ukrainians blew up last week in the dry dock in Crimea. Remember, they hit the landing ship and they hit a submarine. Well, the crew of the landing ship apparently was already on the boat because they were getting ready to leave. They were already repaired when the Ukrainians hit. They killed 62 Russian sailors in that attack, which is pretty wild. A Trojan drone story where the Ukrainians flew a drone in the Russian region of Kursk. They led the Russians to believe that the Russians had taken control of the drone, that they basically had hacked it. And the Russians land the drone on their airfield, get all of their top brass to come out and check it out, the FSB, everybody taking pictures and analyzing it, and the Ukrainians blew it up. It was a Trojan drone. The Ukrainians knew what they were doing the whole time, blew it. The Russia's 14th Guard Fighter Aviation Regiment was also blown up in a Ukrainian drone attack in Kursk, the same region as well. This was yesterday. The Russians attacked Odessa, the port in Ukraine, as retaliation, as of course the Ukrainians attacked a Russian naval headquarters. So the Russians, of course, attacked a hotel, a grain storage, and civilian port facilities, which is, of course, a war crime. Ukraine's gross domestic product, which is their economy, grew by 19%, almost 20% year on year in the second quarter. That's good news. Russia's torture methods in occupied parts of Ukraine have been so brutal that some victims have died, the head of a UN-mandated investigative body said today. Russia's Interior Ministry put the chairman of the International Criminal Court, his deputy, and another judge on Russia's most wanted list for investigating Putin's war crimes. The German newspaper Bild says it will take Ukrainians 3 months to learn how to operate German Taurus missiles. Not quite sure what that means, whether that's trying to kill the deal or whether it's trying to say, hey, Germany, you can go ahead and provide these missiles. It'll only take 3 months. Hard to know which. And finally, the Washington Post says a bipartisan group of United States senators visited Ukraine recently and found that there was no evidence that weapons provided by Washington are making their way onto the black market. All right. That is it for the news today, guys. I'm going to go. We go to Discord. Let's go to Discord for 15, 20 minutes. We can do that. All right. Let's go to Discord. It's discord.aravosis.com. You can check out the auctions too. As I said, we've got the auctions going on till Wednesday. Otherwise, thank you for joining us. Thank you, mods, for getting all the trolls tonight. Thank you for the gifts, guys, on TikTok and YouTube and elsewhere. And I will see you all tomorrow night, okay? 6 p.m. Eastern Time, U.S., more show. I always do the ongoing updates. I may do some updates on TikTok tonight too. But otherwise, see you guys tomorrow night at 6. And let's go to Discord. Okay. Discord community. Who do I think is winning? Interesting question for the end, because it's always sort of the obvious question too. Russia is not winning. Ukraine is doing better. Ukraine can win this. Good news for Ukraine in the last few weeks. I would say Ukraine is doing better than Russia right now, but we still remains to be seen if Ukraine can win this. I don't know. They can, but whether they're going to win this. And again, a large part of that's going to depend on how much we help them, I think. But right now, Ukraine's doing much better than Russia is. Yes. And honestly, if, short of being able to say, oh, Ukraine's going to win for sure, I want Ukraine to be doing better than Russia, and they are. Thank you, Adam, which is good news. So, but it may take a while, All right, guys. Thank you for the gift. Thank you, Adam, for that. All right. See you guys later. Go to Discord, discord.aravosis.com. Thank you, Jalopy and Felicia. And when you go to the left-hand side of the Discord, look for John's after party. I will be there in about a minute or two. All right. Thanks, guys. Burp, 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 burp.